This report explains provision on the extinguishment of sale and conventional redemption found in Articles 1600 to 1606 of Book 4, Chapter 7 of the Civil Code of the Philippines. These provisions govern how a contract of sale may be terminated or ended and how a seller may later buy back the property under specific conditions, including the legal treatment of transactions that appear as sales but are actually security devices or equitable mortgage. Extinguishment of sale, Article 1600. Article 1600 provides that the contract of sale is extinguished in the same manner as all other obligations. This means that a sale may be ended by payment, performance, or other modes of extinguishment of obligations set forth in the code, such as novation, compensation, or condonation. In addition, a sale may also be extinguished by a conventional redemption where the parties expressly agree that the seller may repurchase, or by legal redemption where the right to redeem is granted by law in certain cases. Conventional redemption, Article 1601. Article 1601 defines conventional redemption as a situation where the seller or vendor reserves the right to repurchase the thing sold, provided that the vendor complies with the requirements of Article 1616 and any other stipulations agreed upon by the parties. In simple terms, the seller may reclaim the property by paying back the sale price, reimbursing certain expenses, and fulfilling any additional conditions set in the contract. This mechanism is commonly known as a sale with the right to repurchase, or pacto de retrosale. Equitable mortgage versus truth sale. Articles 1602 to 1604. Article 1602 enumerates several circumstances under which a contract that purports to be a sale with the right to repurchase is presumed to be an equitable mortgage rather than a true sale. The circumstances include the sale price is unusually or grossly inadequate, the vendor continues to possess the property as a leasee or otherwise, after or upon expiration of the right to repurchase, another instrument is executed, extending or granting a new redemption period. The purchaser retains for himself a portion of the purchase price. The vendor binds himself to pay the taxes on the thing sold. The real intention of the parties is that the transaction secures the payment of a debt or performance of another obligation. In any of these cases, any money, fruits, or other benefits received by the buyer, such as rent, are treated as interest and are subject to usury laws. Article 1603 adds that in case of doubt, a contract appearing to be a sale with the right to repurchase must be constructed as an equitable mortgage in favor of protecting the weaker party and ensuring fair treatment. Moreover, Article 1604 clarifies the same rules apply even to contract that purports to be absolute sales so long as the transaction is in reality intended to secure a debt. Reformations of instruments, 1605. Article 1605 provides that the apparent vendor may move for a reformation of the instrument in cases covered by Articles 1602 and 1604. This means that if the contract is in fact an equitable mortgage but is labeled as a sale, the court may amend the documents that it reflects the true intention of the parties. Reformations and equitable is a remedy designed to correct written contract where where the language does not correspond with the actual agreement. Period of the right to repurchase. Article 1606. Article 1606 fixes the duration of the right to repurchase under Article 1601. In the absence of an express agreement, the seller may exercise the right within 4 years from the date of the contract. If the parties set longer period, it may not exceed 10 years. Even after the expiration of this period, the vendor may still exercise the right to repurchase within 30 days. From the time of a final judgment in a civil action declares the contract to be true sale with the right to repurchase.
Good day, everyone. I will be discussing Articles 1607 to 1612. Article 1607 explains that if a seller wants to exercise the right to repurchase a property and the buyer refuses, the seller cannot simply take it back. Instead, the seller must go to court and file an action to redeem the property. This ensures that the ownership is not transferred arbitrarily and that legal procedures are followed. Article 1608 provides protection to buyers in good faith. If the buyer sells the property to another person, the seller can still redeem it, but only if the right to repurchase is properly recorded in the Registry of Property. Without registration, third parties may not be bound by that right. Article 1609 states that the seller must return not only the purchase price but also expenses incurred by the buyer, such as necessary repairs and preservation costs. This ensures fairness since the buyer may have invested in maintaining the property. Article 1610 clarifies that if there are multiple sellers or buyers, each party can only exercise their rights proportionally. For example, if several sellers sold the property jointly, one seller cannot redeem the entire property unless authorized by the others. Article 1611 deals with co-owners. If a co-owner sells their share with the right to repurchase, the redemption applies only to that portion. Finally, Article 1612 states that once the seller successfully redeems the property, they recover it free from any charges or encumbrances created by the buyer. However, leases made in good faith by the buyer may still be respected under certain conditions. Overall, these provisions ensure that the right to repurchase is exercised fairly, protects third parties, and balances the interests of both the original seller and the buyer. Thank you.
Now let's proceed to Article 1613. Article 1613 state that when several co-owners or co-heirs sold a property together, the buyer may require all of them to agree first before redeeming the whole property. If they fail to agree, the buyer cannot be forced to accept only a partial redemption. In other words, if multiple people sold one property together, they should also act together if they want to exercise their right to repurchase it. The buyer has a right to refuse if only some of them wants to redeem their share because this may create complication in ownership. For example, X, Y, and Z jointly sold a piece of land to A with the right to repurchase. Later on, only one person or one co-owners wants to redeem his part of the land. Under Article 1613, the buyer cannot be forced to accept the partial redemption if the other sibling do not agree to redeem the property as a whole. This article protects the buyer from ending up with divided or complicated ownership arrangement. Now that we have discussed redemption involving co-owners acting together, let us move on to Article 1614, which deals with co-owners who sold their share separately. Article 1614 provides that each co-owners who separately sold their share of undivided property may independently exercise the rights of repurchase over his own share. In other words, the buyer cannot be force the co-owners to redeem the entire property. Unlike the previous article, this provision recognizes the separate right of co-owners because they sold their share individually and not as a group. For example, suppose X, Y, and Z co-owns a piece of land. X separately sold only her share with Pacto de Retro agreement. Later, X may redeem only her own share without involving Y and Z. Also, the buyer cannot require X to redeem the whole property because she only sold her portion. Okay? Now, next let's proceed to Article 1615. According to Article 1615, if the buyer leaves several heirs, the action for redemption cannot be bought against each heir except for his respective share. No? However, if the inheritance has already been divided and the property was awarded to only one heir, then the redemption may be made against that heir for the whole property. The article clarifies that who should be involved in redemption process after the death of the buyer. Okay, for example, suppose the buyer passed away and left the property to his three children. Now, the seller who wants to redeem can only demand redemption according to each child's inheritance share. But if the property was later given entirely to just one child during the partition, then the seller may redeem the whole property directly from that heir. Okay? Now, let's proceed to Article 1616, which focuses on the obligation of the seller before redemption can happen. Article 1616 states that the seller cannot exercise the right to repurchase without returning the price of the sale, as well paying the expense of the contract, no, lawful payment, and necessary and useful expenses made on the property. This means the seller cannot simply demand the property back without reimbursing the buyer. The law recognizes that the buyer may have spent money to preserve or improve the property. Okay, for example, if the buyer repaired the roof of the house or improved the farmland by installing irrigation, the seller must reimburse those expenses upon redemption. This article ensures fairness because the buyer should not suffer losses when the property is returned to the seller. Okay? Now, let's proceed to Article 1617, which discusses fruits or produce of the property. Article 1617 explains that if there were visible or growing fruits on the land of the land at the time of the sale, there will generally be no reimbursement for them during redemption if the buyer did not separately pay for those fruits. Okay? However, if there were no fruits during the sale but fruits existed at the time of redemption, the fruits shall be divided proportionally between the seller and the buyer according to the time they possess the property. Okay? This article usually applies to agricultural land or property producing crops or harvest. Okay? For example, suppose a rice field was sold during planting season and harvesting time came when the buyer possessed the property. If the crops were already visible during the sale of the sale and the buyer did not separately pay for them, then there will be no reimbursement. But if the crops only grew later during the redemption period, the harvest may be divided fairly between the buyer and the seller, depending on how long each possesses the land. The provision prevents unfair enrichment and gives both parties a fair share of produce of the property. Next is let's discuss with Article 1618, which explains the condition of the property after redemption. Now, Article 1618 provides that when the seller redeems the property, it must be returned free from mortgage or any other charges created by the buyer. However, leases made by the buyer in good faith and according to local custom must still be respected by the seller. This means the buyer cannot place burden on the property that might negatively affect the seller. The redemption, however, the law protects the tenants who entered into the lease agreement in good faith. For example, if the buyer mortgaged the property to the bank, the seller has the right to recover it free from that mortgage, no, after redemption. But if the buyer entered the property to a family under valid lease agreement, the seller must respect that lease after taking back the property.
Article 1619. Legal redemption is the right to be subrogated upon the same terms and conditions stipulated in the contract, in the place of one who acquires a thing by purchase or dation in payment, or by any other transaction whereby ownership is transmitted by honoris writer. This article means that a person authorized by law may take the place of the buyer in a sale by paying the same price and following the same conditions of the contract. Article 1620. A co-owner of a thing may exercise the right of redemption in case the shares of all the other co-owners or of any of them are sold to a third person. If the price of the alienation is grossly excessive, the redemptioner shall pay only a reasonable one. Should two or more co-owners desire to exercise the right of redemption, they may only do so in proportion to the share they may respectively have in the thing owned in common. This article means that if one co-owner sells their share to an outsider, the remaining co-owners have the right to redeem or buy back that share. This helps preserve co-ownership and prevents strangers from entering the ownership without first giving the co-owners a chance. Article 1621. The owners of adjoining land shall also have the right of redemption when a piece of rural land, the area of which does not exceed 1 hectare, is alienated unless the grantee does not own any rural land. This right is not applicable to adjacent lands which are separated by brooks, drains, ravines, roads, and other apparent servitudes for the benefit of other estates. If two or more or adjoining owners desire to exercise the right of redemption at the same time, the owner of the adjoining land of smaller area shall be preferred, and should both lands have the same area, the one who first requested the redemption. This article gives owners of neighboring rural lands the right to redeem small rural property that is sold to another person. The purpose is to combine small agricultural lands and make them more productive. Article 1622. Whenever a piece of urban land which is so small and so situated that the major portion thereof cannot be used for any practical purpose within a reasonable time, having been brought merely for speculation, is about to be resold, the owner of any adjoining land has a right of preemption at a reasonable price. If the resale has been perfected, the owner of the adjoining land shall have the right of redemption, also at a reasonable price. When two or more owners of adjoining lands wish to exercise the right of preemption or redemption, the owner whose intended use of the land in question appears best justified shall be preferred. This article applies to very small urban lands that were bought only for speculation or profit. Before the land is sold again, neighboring landowners have the first chance to buy it at a reasonable price. 1623. The right of legal preemption or redemption shall not be exercised except within 30 days from the notice in writing by the prospective vendor, or by the vendor as the case may be. The deed of sale shall not be recorded in the registry of property unless accompanied by an affidavit of the vendor that he has given written notice thereof to all possible redemptioners. The right of redemption of co-owners excludes that of adjoining owners. This article explains that the right of redemption or preemption must be exercised within 30 days after receiving written notice of the sale. This rule prevents delays and ensures fairness in property transactions and also states that co-owners have priority over adjoining landowners when exercising the right of redemption. Article 1624, an assignment of credits and other incorporeal rights shall be perfected in accordance with the provisions of Article 1475. This article explains that the transfer or assignment of credits and other incorporeal rights becomes valid once there is an agreement between the parties involved. Similar to a contract of sale under Article 1475, the assignment is perfected when both parties mutually consent to the transfer even if the actual delivery or payment has not yet happened. This means that the rights such as debts, claims, or other intangible rights can legally be transferred through consent alone.
Hi, my name is Nicole, and today I will be discussing in Chapter 8, Article 1625 to Article 1630. First, Article 1625 of the Civil Code of the Philippines dictates that an assignment of credit, rights, or option does not affect a third person unless it appears on the public instrument or is recorded on the registry of the property, only if other property is involved. It protects the third parties, ensuring that they have notice of the change. Next is Article 1626 of the Civil Code of the Philippines states that if a debtor pays third creditor without having a knowledge or before having a knowledge of the assignment of the debt, the third party is released from the obligation. This protects the debtor who acts in good faith without noticing a change of the credit or without notice of transferring the credit.
Article 1627 of the Civil Code of the Philippines dictates that an assignment of credit includes all the accessory of rights such as pledge, mortgage, preference, or guarantee. This means that when a debt is sold or transferred, all the security associated with it moves to the new creditor. Next, Article 1628 of the Civil Code of the Philippines dictates that a vendor in good faith guarantees the existence and legality of a credit at the time of sale, but not the creditor's solvency unless stipulated. However, a vendor in bad faith is liable to all the expenses and all the damages. Next, Article 1629 of the Civil Code of the Philippines establishes a one-year warranty for an assigner's liability regarding a debtor's solvency. If no period is agreed upon, the liability lasts for 1 year from the assignment, or if the debt has already matured from the maturity date. Lastly, Article 1630 of the Civil Code of the Philippines states that one who sells inheritance without listing specific items is only liable for their character as an heir. It is part of the law on assignments of credits and incorporeal rights. It is to protect the buyers from the sellers who's only liable for specific contents.
So, Article 1631, assignment in bulk or lump sum, states that when a person sells an entirety of the certain rights, rents, or credits for a lump sum, the assigner is only responsible for legitimacy of the pool in general. The assigner does not warrant each individual credit, they only warrant the entirety of the credits exists and belongs to them. Article 1632, liability for the existence and legitimacy of the credit, especially addresses the sale of an inheritance without enumerating the specific things. Often it is composed. The rule is the assigner is only answerable for their character as inherit. Article 1633, obligation to pay for fruits or profits. This article protects the assignee from the assigner. Profiting twice. The rule is if the assigner has already profited from some of the fruits of the inheritance they must sold, they reimburse the assignee unless there is agreement to the contrary. Article 1634, scope of liability of the assigner. The article defines the extent of the assigner responsibility regarding solvency of the debtor. The rule is the assigner is responsible for the existence and legality of the credit is the time of the sale. The assigner is not responsible unless it was expressly stipulated in the contract. Then Article 1635, scope of liability and perpetual rents. Then when the assignment involves certain types of long-term income such as perpetual rents, the ability to for solvency follows a different timeline. The rule is if the assigner is liable for the solvency of the debtor in perpetual rent, that liability expires after 10 years from the date of the assignment.